AI is not itself a solution, it's a tool. On the one side, I think you need to know why you're going in. And on the other, I think you have to be prepared by how much information you could be learning in hyper time.
I'm curious what your perspective is on the client insights in the financial services and how AI might assist this area.
Let me be very clear. I have no idea what I'm doing. And oddly, people are really attracted to that because it's so honest. And if people don't like that, they're not my prospect.
Resilience and authenticity are the keys to making a lasting impact. I personally am fascinated with how can I use this to make an impact. For me, and it's funny your podcast is named What's the Point? Because for me, that's the question I keep asking.
How much time Steve Jobs put in those presentations, and everything was perfectly scripted and timed. And so he didn't talk about the iPod as having, 5 gigs of memory. It was 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Welcome everyone to a very special episode of Simple Tech Talk. Today we're mixing things up because this episode will be shared on both Simple Tech Talk and What's the Point, hosted by none other than my guest and co-host, Robert Bailey. Now, if you're new here, I'm Johnny Palumbo, founder of Simplify Tech, where we help businesses harness the power of AI and automations to simplify their operations and boost productivity. But today, we're taking a deeper dive into some shared ground between Robert and I, like resilience, building a brand, and just exactly how AI can fuel growth and engagement. We'll keep it conversational and explore some ways that life and career insights from things that we've learned each other along the way. So Robert, it's fantastic to have you on. For those that don't know, Robert hosts What's the Point, which digs into stories of resilience and explores how people build confidence and use it for good. Robert, can you tell us a bit more about What's the Point and what it's all about?
Yeah, I think that the first point is that when I was putting the title together, I put a question mark there, and it wasn't what I meant. I don't really want you to tell me what's the point. I wanted it to be more demanding. A lot of people love to talk now, and they talk, and they talk, and they talk. And so the idea of what's the point, it's like, let me find those people that understand that our objective is not to, research something to its perfection. Our conversation is to understand better and build a relationship. So what's the point gets to the point, and I find that the people that get that when they see the name, they like it. Those are my people.
I love it, Robert. I had a chance to listen to a couple of your episodes. Some really engaging guests and some really interesting topics you guys got to speak about. We spoke the other day just about how you and I have had some shared career experiences in terms of resilience, from career changes to evolving industry trends. I'd like for you to maybe tell our listeners a bit about your career and just how we've gotten to where we are.
It's an unusual career, and I find, I had a breakfast meeting this morning where I was acknowledging that my maturity is leading me to find out why some of the things happen in my life that I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of famous people, celebrities, and so forth. I'm not quite sure what that's all about, but they're pretty substantial people. I worked for a time with Charlie Rose when I was still getting my journalism degree, and got to know Larry King, hosted a cable TV show with Larry's 5th wife, some say his best wife, and Sharon is really wonderful. So I had these different experiences. Another great one I love just to share, because I thought about it the other day, is I was working, this is when I was much younger and living in New York, as in production of a Metropolitan Opera. And I was standing off stage during the live rehearsal, and it was just, in the wings on stage, and I felt this tremendous energy next to me, and I turned, and right next to me is Pavarotti. And Pavarotti leaps onto the stage and belts out, and I just thought it was like this rush of wind, It was really amazing. And so a lot of my career, so-called, is a lot of experiences like that. I did work in commercial business in a couple places, in real estate, most recently. I worked too in institutional investing. I always had a drive toward understanding what high net worth people are looking for, And lo and behold, now everything that you and I are talking about is bringing people together to provide non-traditional solutions to people who are really tired of all the things that I learned when I was younger. And my peers, I now call them the Mavericks in this group, are understanding that. And we're all working together on that in a really good, connected way. I mentioned to you that I'm working on a program on connection, not connecting, not networking, but connection. And, it all starts out with understanding that rapport is not an event. I said to my wife last night, that I've studied this. I said, you and I are still building our rapport, and we've been together for 22 years. And she got it. She said, yeah, oh yeah, we're you're constantly building when you have a relationship. So the idea of what's the point is to be a trigger point for those kind of conversations. It's also to talk about the philosophy of, really engaging people, not doing transactional relationship, not having transactional relationships, not working on transactions, but, what can I give here? I know what I can get. It's obvious that this guy can really help me, but what can I give him right now? And a lot of people aren't tuned to that.
Absolutely. It's inspiring to see just how you've gone through your career, and I appreciate you giving us an overview here, but just how you've evolved throughout the world of finance and business, from real estate to advising. We spoke the other day just about how you've built a lot of what your brand is around passing your knowledge on to those around you, both in business and stuff like podcasts. I've had the privilege just to learn what I can in these few brief meetings from you, but it is really important to, like you said, be a connector. I'm curious if you'll let me have another question here. How does resilience, which is a key theme within What's the Point, how does resilience influence your approach to finance and business advice?
I had a couple of people say, well, this sounds good. I like the Mavericks idea, et cetera, et cetera. They're not Mavericks, by the way. I've already decided. But they said, well, you need to get your series, you need to get a securities license. So I studied all summer for the securities license. The thing is absurd. It's really absurd. And I talked to my friends in the business and they laugh and they go, yeah, it's totally absurd. And I have a little anecdote that puts it together. So I decided, look, I've got my hands full with what I'm doing here, working on development of the digital assets, working on content, working on relationships and building relationships, working now to work as a connector with people and get business coming in all over the place. And I talked to one of the guys who's on the Mavericks on my website, and he said, it's funny you say that. He said, I talked to the guy. I had a friend who took the exam and he failed it. He didn't pass it. Yeah, it's a pass fail, but you got to get a certain grade. It's 82 that you have to get. And he was so frustrated because he said, I'm really smart and I'm really studied hard and so he went to talk to a friend. He said, no, you need to understand that when you're taking these securities exams, you don't make any money and your client hardly makes any money. He took the exam again, he passed it. Now, how insane is that? That means that the securities exams have nothing to do with the real objective for getting into that industry. It's strictly about the regulations. And that it's not my thing. So what I've decided to do, I'm going to take the exam, but not apply for the license.
There you go. That's a great experience to have. And, I've seen a lot of parallels just within the world of tech. As a young entrepreneur myself, deciding to take the leap. When it came to deciding to go to college, getting a double major in computer engineering, computer science, there's a lot that's constantly evolving. I had the privilege of getting a certificate in AI, which over the years, I took the same class multiple times, and AI changed several times over the years. So as the world of technology really does go to evolve, it's important to stay resilient through a lot of this stuff and learn.
How do you do that? How do you stay? Because even in our short conversations that we've had so far, we talk about that. And I learn a lot from you, and then you just jotted down some notes on saying, how do we do that well when it's not because AI is moving so fast. Exactly. It's that we learn more. I think we learn part of it. How do you stay on top of it?
Being able to learn, just embracing the mindset of constant learning is something that's really fueled all that I do in my life, from Simplified Tech to my own personal ventures. Um, I have the opportunity to also teach about AI at the high school I went to the business classes. And what I always preach is you need to stay constantly learning. The theory comes from a Stanford psychologist by the name of Carol Dweck, who developed this ideology called the growth mindset. And the idea is that everything that happens in your life, good, bad, shitty, like it all is there to serve you a purpose. Nothing is bad if you can learn from it, if you can grow from it. So relating that to AI as an industry, it's important to stay up to date as there's new press releases coming out every day. You look at the venture capital world and there's new companies, new ideas being minted every single day. Within the world of venture capital, a third of the money is currently going to AI projects. So there's a lot to stay on top of. In my life, we stay on YouTube constantly. We have a team member here at Simplified Tech whose job is to stay on YouTube, stay on top of the new technologies. And giving you a personal story about what we've been working on recently, we about 3 or 4 weeks ago, OpenAI had a big press release where they announced a $250 billion valuation, which is astronomical. By far the largest non-for-profit in the world. And they announced, on top of announcing GPT-4o1, they are going heavy into voice bots. So we found out about their new voice bots the day of. And voice bots have been around, but usually you call the phone number and you prompt it, and then there's some clicks on the other side, and 5-6 seconds later, it spits out a response. Now, using this GPT-01 model, it sounds like you're talking to a human. So within a week, we were rolling out solutions to hotels we worked with, dental firms, where we built them AI receptionists. And this completely eliminates entire people's jobs. Not in a bad way, but it lets them focus on what's important, managing their patients in the office rather than just having to pick up phones all day. In the hotel industry, this was groundbreaking because we were able to deliver a technology to a chain of hotels that not only takes over the receptionist's duty to pick up the phone, but say there's an Indian guest staying there, they can call the phone number and have a conversation in Hindi, and ChatGPT will fluently have that conversation with the guest to give them all the support they need, backed by all the resources that the hotel has. So really just to embrace the constant learning, staying on top of the new technologies, and just being constantly curious is what's really helped me stay on top of the growth mindset. And
I like what you said a lot, and I infer from that it means kind of something that I've started to do. And I started seeing this pop up, both frankly in reading the Bible in a slightly different way, and also looking at some a lot of science, actually, or neuroscience. That if we lean into the future, it's a little scary, but things start to come together. And your examples right there are leaning in, and people are so afraid they cling. I mean, there's nothing worse than clinging to something that you barely control. We're wasting your time and your energy. And so, I think you and I probably agree on this, that AI is not itself a solution. It's a tool.
100%.
It's a huge tool to be able to do things so you're not taking time. I get ideas from AI, and I think, oh, that's great. It would have taken me a couple of weeks or a couple of months to get that idea. Now I got that idea. So, boom. I mean, in many ways, to me, it's quantum mechanics, in fact.
Right.
So I'm getting to a different point of view faster, so I can process that, but I have to process it. So this gets into a kind of a big conversation, but I think you and I are embracing what can be done with AI, and I think clients like it. There's a joke embedded in this that I saw somebody posted. I'm on LinkedIn with some really funny, smart people, and he said, I love how it says push 1 for English, and they put you on somebody that barely speaks English, right?
Yeah.
And this is what that takes care of. is I've got somebody, and presumably these services allow you to default if you really do need to talk to a human in every case, I would think.
Absolutely. There's always a user handoff involved.
Yeah.
Robert, I really appreciate your insights on resilience and the importance of adapting to change. It's clear that both of us have experienced just how rapidly evolving technologies, especially AI, are reshaping our respective industries. We've touched on the significance of building connections, understanding client needs, and staying ahead of industry trends. Now, I'd like to explore how we're both specifically using AI and automations in our fields to build stronger brands and enhance client experiences. Let's dive a little bit into just how AI is redefining brand identity in tech and how it's being leveraged in the financial advisory industry. I'm particularly interested in just how we can use these tools for brand positioning. Not only improving client satisfaction, but building trust is something that we've both spoken a lot about. I'd like to ask, how do you think AI can redefine a brand's identity in finance?
I have a little bit of a wandering answer, not a long wander, short wander. I have a friend who is obsessed by trust is the antidote to digitization of everything. If humans could trust each other, that would be the antidote to the speed of change with digital operations. You have to think about that to really grasp why that's important. But likewise, for me, I'm finding, I think I told you I have a column also. I have a monthly column, and I've been able to sort of experiment with the readership about what they're interested in. I'm talking about business issues that pertain to having a better business, making more money. But it's not about how to do better marketing or anything. It's about how to think. And one of the primary pillars in this is about getting clarity. For me, it doesn't make any sense to use AI. It doesn't even make any sense to turn on your computer or your phone or whatever to use AI unless you know why.
Tell me more about that.
This summer, I worked to totally revamp my business. I just described it to somebody at breakfast, and I said, I ripped up my whole garden. It was a pretty big garden, and I've replanted, and now it's starting to blossom. And I said, that's where I am. It's starting to blossom because it needed to be ripped up. I live in South Florida. We have vines and roots everywhere. So when you say it locally, people get that. Like, wow, that's like a big job. So yeah, you rip out all the roots that have been there for decades, and you start from scratch. So the net result of the clarity is not only can I explain what it is that we're doing with the Mavericks and why we're working together on non-traditional solutions. You hear the keywords right there already. But when I'm very clear about what I'm doing, it becomes magnetic for other people. Everybody's had the experience where, you're hot for a girl or for a guy, right? And you're the last person that they want to be near because you're desperate, because you're not clear about, first of all, it's not about them, it's generic, right? So clarity is, I just read a great romance story the other day about a guy, and it was Ron Howard and his wife met when they were like 14 or 13 or something, and they've been married for 50 years or something now, and for I don't know 40 years, not quite that long, but it was they were friends, and that clarity of that relationship. She was friends. She supported him before he was a superstar. He was just, that kind of clarity in everything we do. Once you have that, what am I doing here? What's my goal? It doesn't have to be perfect, but you really need to, you'll experience that clarity. Or you say it to people, you'll see it, and then they go, wow, that sounds great. And so the AI, I think, is useful because, and the clarity is important, and it continues because if you have a bad prompt, you're wasting your time.
Exactly.
I'll give one good example. I was putting in a prompt this morning, and I put in people, when people, and I thought, no, when an individual. Well, people say, oh, what's the difference? It's a big difference. All right, when you're talking to I'll say someone who is very precise, we need to think precisely.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a new habit to think, oh, I don't mean people, I mean an individual, one person. Now you're really thinking in concrete terms, cause and effect, assimilation, comparison, right?
Gotcha.
You're thinking more mathematically, not just because you should to use AI, but because you can, right? You're not asking AI for its opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never said this before, but as I'm saying, you're sitting here talking to you, AI is completely opposite of everything that's going on now in mass media.
Now, you mentioned prompting, and I want to dig a little bit more into just exactly how you are using AI. For the Simple Tech Talk listeners out there, I can tell they're dying to listen. How is Robert using AI in his business? Now, you've mentioned the importance of clarity in your business approach and how you've recently revamped the entire organization. You've also touched on the significance of trust and increasing just how prevalent that is in the digital world. I'm curious, how are you incorporating AI into this new vision of your business? Have you used this to help revitalize some of what's going on with trusted advisory? And how are you using AI tools to enhance your brand, improve client experiences, or, as you stress, building that critical trust with your audience in the financial advisory space?
It's a great question. It's a really good conceptual question. I was a teen when making long distance calls was very expensive, and you had to pay by the minute. I had for a time, friends that were, in South America or Europe or something, and the phone bill for a call was like $30, right, for like a couple of minutes, right? So I think I may bring that into AI, but when I use it, I kind of treat it that way. Even though it's not costly like that, it can be, going down a rabbit hole, and it's the same thing that happens now with searches. A lot of people, they go off and they're, like looking at stuff that has nothing to do with the reason they came there, right? And the same danger is there when we're undisciplined using AI. So that's number one. I try clarity. What am I trying to achieve here? So what I've ended up doing, and what's really fun is I have somebody like you. I have one or two other people that I talk to at a pretty high level. What's working? What's not working? What do you use instead? Both for cost and for reliability. They talk about, the flaws and the weaknesses and the hallucinations that you can get, and you can get them pretty easily. But if you use the better AI, the more core AI, because Chat GPT, Claude, we've talked about, you get as close to the source of these as you can. You tend to be better, in my observation right now. So that's number two, kind of. And then the way that I use it now, I use it a lot. I sort of suggested this before, to think. I'm writing. I don't use it to write the articles, but I'll use it to research, to think about the articles. And I've gotten into some philosophical discussions with myself and with AI,
Right.
that, I weed out the difference between two words or something. I think about that and I go, that's really good. And, I might take a phrase, if there's a phrase in there, and I will, this is for writers out there, I'll put an attribution at the bottom. I'll say I used AI to help write this article, which is, I think, the honest thing to do.
Absolutely.
You put that there, but the thinking that goes in is now at a higher, more thorough, kind of time constrained advantage. You might come up with these things over time, but you've now gotten it very quickly, and you've got really dense ideas, which is great. I use it for writing. I use it now increasingly to test, to use video, because one of the things that we're doing that is I'll take an interview. I've done this with the Mavericks. I'll do this with other people. We'll probably do it here. I'll take a 30 or 40 minute interview, cut it down to 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then use that to market. And I've had it happen increasingly, and it's just working now. I don't know how long it will work, where I'm trying to get a meeting set, and somebody says, "Oh, I don't know. Let's see, maybe after Thanksgiving." And I go, "Oh." So I take the short video and send them the video and say, "Well, listen, here's let me just show you this interview I had with Johnny. And they'll see it, and they'll see you talk, and they'll go, oh, yeah, he really knows what he's talking about. And then they'll write, and they'll say, how's next week? Right? So I've now stitched up the sales period, the sales cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also gotten them in a different frame of mind altogether. So I've gotten them closer to where the conversation that I really want to have without intruding on their time. It's respectful, it's short, it's direct. That's a good start. So those are a couple of really, really important ways that I'm using AI right now. The other one is, and I do this as a quirky thing, probably nobody else, I don't know if anybody else has this, but I have an iPad next to my bed, and I'll have an idea in the middle of the night, and I'll go, what if, and I'll put a question down, and I usually often use Claude, and Claude will start up, as you probably know. Claude will say, how can I help you this early morning, Rob? So, but it allows my mind is already going. I may as well try to harness it and turn it into something productive. Increasingly, my challenge, and this is supposed to be a little humorous, I've got so many interesting comments, usable comments, that I'm trying to find ways that I can archive them so that I can reuse them, right? I mean, I find there's so much information that I'm hungry for, and it pertains to different parts of what I'm doing. So on the one side, I'll summarize by saying, on the one side, I think you need to know why you're going in. And on the other sort of end of the spectrum, I think you have to be prepared by how much information you can turn into knowledge, and you've changed your initial mission may have been challenged, right? I mean, you could be learning in hyper time and realize that you weren't as clear as you thought, and so forth. And I'm giving you permission to have that happen. I mean, I think that's a good thing.
That's great. Thank you for giving a comprehensive answer on how you use AI, not just to, going back to an earlier point, but expand on clarity within your business. I'd like to dig a little bit more into how you're using this for client prospecting, because this is something we're seeing increasingly in the industry, both in terms of lead generation, marketing, howbeit. I want to thank you. Your insights on AI for clarity and precision are fascinating. You've touched on how AI can help us think more precisely and mathematically, which is crucial in both tech and finance, my world and yours. Now, I'm particularly intrigued by your approach to using AI for research and ideation. You touched on it briefly, but while maintaining the human touch in your writing and client interactions, this balance really seems key in building trust, which you've highlighted as crucial in today's digital age, making sure that you both express this was written by AI and I've overseen it. I'm curious what your perspective is on the client insights in the financial services and how AI might assist this area. A little more specifically, how do you see AI helping to personalize outreach to high value clients? You mentioned using these videos, and while we might use AI editors to do this, I'm wondering if you have any examples where AI has helped you in a particularly effective way in this regard.
Yeah, and I think it's a good example of the overlay of my observations, hopefully some common sense, and the marketing target and the objective. The objective is almost, in my case, almost always to get a meeting. So I'll give you a good example that I recently put an article together, and people are starting to get very familiar with what AI generated graphics look like. But I don't think they really mind it. I think most people don't care. But if you ask them, do you think they'd say, oh yeah, it's definitely AI, but they don't think about it. So it's sort of like we have to go back to Freud and Jung, right? To understand. They see it, but they don't really care. Is it really important? Well, it's subconsciously they get, but is it like real? So
it's Plato's allegory of the case at the end of the day.
And so let's move on. I mean, we're business people, so let's move on. But I put an article together using ChatGPT, and I think I generated an image from ChatGPT. But I put in the crux of what I wanted to say. I mean, it was to that point about concision, that you want to. I basically spelled out the thesis, And I can't recall exactly what it was. I could dig it up, but I put the thesis there. It was fairly, it was a paragraph. It wasn't a couple lines. It was, pretty well. Like if you read this, you'd get it, right? But I said expand it to I started to do it with video too. I might have made it into a 90-second video and then converted it back to an article. I've been doing that, testing that. How does that work? And it works pretty well. Yeah, you have to check it, but so I got a nice article. I looked at it. Man, it's pretty good. And then I wanted an image. So I thought, okay, so who's my target? My real target is probably somebody who's in their 50s and 60s, maybe their 70s, because they're high net worth and they're looking to get out. But the image that I put together was I thought, well, for this article, I want to have a female business person who has some employees. And I put it together, and the description was, attractive woman, silver hair. So she's like 40, hip 40s, right? Looking. So attractive woman, silver hair, 40, 50, fit with a white blouse that's open at the neck. And behind her are a couple of younger people, one white female, one, attractive white female, attractive, handsome Indian guy or black guy, whatever it was. I had two guys. And then behind them, I want the Wasatch Mountains in Utah. Well, this thing comes up and it's all looking great, but she's looking like a total slut because her shirt is totally open and I'm looking at her bra, right? so okay, a hot picture, but I said, hey, could we make her a little more conservative? So the next image came up, the shirt was closed up. I mean, my wife was, I'm not sure what her emotional feeling was when she saw that, but she looked at it and she said, yeah, the second one is better. So the point is that we can direct this. We are like art directors when we're using some of this imagery and creating it. And you're not trying to do it, in a silly way, serendipitously. You're really trying to say, okay, now who's going to look? So what's the net result? The net result was I sent that out to a couple of the Mavericks and a couple of other people. And they said, this is really well written. And it's really good. You're really good at this. So they were aware that it was generated, but they were also heard my intellectual interests in it. So it worked. It did what I wanted to do. It's doing what I wanted to do. That's a pretty good example. And that saved me hours anyway.
Yeah, no, your approach to balancing the AI generated ideas and issues with your personal expertise is fascinating. I'm curious just to dig in a little bit about how you keep your brand genuine through you mentioned AI hallucinations and other anecdotes like that story you just gave. It's clear that maintaining authenticity while leveraging technology is crucial for building trust, going back to that theme. As we consider long-term brand building and content you're putting out there under your name, under your company's name, I'm curious about your strategies for keeping a brand genuine in this AI-driven age. How do you ensure authenticity while using these powerful tools?
It's another big conceptual question, and it's a really good one.
I like to fire those types of questions off it, yeah.
No, it's good because it's a kind of considerations that we need to be making. If we're going to move at hyperspeed, you want to start off right.
Hey, what's the point, man?
Right? If you're going to be going really fast, you want to start right. The first thing I think is important is a balance of aggression and humility. And I think somebody who's really good at that. I mean, there are a lot of really good examples now. Steve Jobs and his career and the way that he made presentations is a really good example of a good presentation that is very powerful, but not in the way you thought it was. When you start studying, and there are a number of books that are written about this, when you start studying how much time Steve Jobs put in those presentations, and everything was perfectly scripted and timed, and talk about connecting. He was connecting. He simplified, and the famous example is he didn't talk about the iPod as having, 5 gigs of memory. It was 1,000 songs in your pocket. So he would discover these phrases that were things that were at the time, so amazing. And in my pocket, it's like it's like unforgettable. And so staying focused on that, I think, is important. What is it that the client is hearing and the client experiences? And unlike Steve Jobs, I am not trying to tell them. I'm careful about telling them what they need because I'm not Apple and I'm not Steve Jobs. However, I think that idea is right, and that's exactly what we're doing in a way. We have a system with Delaware Statutory Trust that allows people to move. I'm just going to tell you this briefly. Allow people to move active real estate investments to passive real estate investments at a huge tax advantage and still get cash out. Well, this really appeals to people that are tired of managing complex real estate, or they're older, or they got more real estate. They just want some of it off of the table. And they weren't aware of this solution. That's the non-traditional part. So I think presenting and articulating complex and workable and not impossibly hard, complex but not impossibly hard solutions it is really beneficial. It's sort of being out there, having this group of people that they can check up on. I think that's a way to maintain authenticity. I think the ultimate in authenticity that I've been using, because it's true, is people will say, I love the idea, I love the Mavericks, the name is great, and it's got no negative connotations, and so on and so forth. So what's your plan? And I will say, and I said it again this morning to somebody, I said, let me be very clear. I have no idea what I'm doing. And oddly, people are really attracted to that.
Right.
Because it's so honest. And if people don't like that, they're not my prospect.
What's the point at the end of the day? Now, Robert, we are coming to the end of our time here. As my co-host for today's episode, I want to give you one last chance to any more topics you'd like to discuss, anything you'd like to prompt me about on the topic of AI or technology. If not, I've got an outro for us.
Yeah, I want you to talk a little bit more about what it is that you do with AI. I may be one of the actors, but you're the director and the producer in a lot of situations. So help me understand how you and I might work together based on this conversation. That sounds like a prompt, doesn't it? I would write that.
It's a bit of a prompt. I wish I could talk about myself as a director or a producer. More accurately, I tend to see myself, and I got this from one of our past podcast guests, I see myself more as an integrator. So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of trailblazers making these new AI technologies, coming up with the ideas. My small part of this world is learning as much as I can. I personally am fascinated with how can I use this to make an impact. For me, and it's funny your podcast is named What's the Point? Because for me, that's the question I keep asking. Yes, this is cool. Yes, this new technology is cool, but what's the point? What can I do with this? For me, we've spoken about my nonprofit, to my business here at Simplify Tech, to even my personalized life, it's how can I make an impact? How can we make an actual change? In terms of what I can do for you, how we can work together, I'd be more than happy to discuss after the show. But for our listeners out there, if you ever are curious about what Simplify Tech has to offer, please go check out our website at www.simplifytech.ai. We've got a lot of different projects, examples, demos on there. Lots of different industries you can go check out on there. But we really do aim to be not the producer, but the integrator. We will analyze the world for you. We'll be the experts. We'll be your consultant for AI. At the end of the day, we are just trying to make an impact with the tools we've been given. Especially as a 22-year-old kid, all I can do is try and give back. While I get the wisdom from you, Robert, I can only hope to deliver you an impact with my experience.
Well, comparing our various levels of wisdom, I think that you've got a great future in AI because this is still early on in the game. AI has been around for years, and people have been waiting a long time for AI to get where it is now, and where it's going is anybody's guess. And I think we've had a really good initial discussion about how to use it today. I really applaud the few people that I know that are engaging this. I think we'll be way ahead of the curve. There's every reason to be confident in AI, and having a partner in thought like you is a great asset.
I appreciate that. Your kind words mean a lot. Robert, this has been an incredibly insightful episode. I think that one of the more powerful things you touched on today is just the role of resilience, not just in our personal lives, but in how we approach change and innovation within business. Hearing your experiences with building trust, focusing on clarity, and just how you bring authenticity into your work really highlights what it takes to build a brand people can genuinely connect with and trust. We also explored the ever-growing influence of AI, from your perspective on using AI to add value without losing that human touch, to sharing your approach to content creation. It's inspiring to see how AI, when paired with personal expertise, can be a powerful tool. I couldn't agree more about balancing AI with authenticity to stay true to our brands and values. So, for our listeners, thank you for joining us on this special crossover episode of Simple Tech Talk and What's the Point? Robert, it's been an absolute pleasure sharing the mic with you today. Until next time, thank you, Robert. Until next time, keep exploring, keep building, and remember that resilience and authenticity are the keys to making a lasting impact. Thank you for listening.